I'm not going to lie. I have a booming headache today. I don't even know why. I think Twitter gives me headaches. This right here in my right hand. This is Twitter. This gives me headaches. And whether it's because of the radiation or whatever that emits from the phone, or some of the nonsense that emits from it, or some of the misguided perceptions that emit from it, it can make me crazy sometimes. The last 24 hours has been one of those times, because I think it hit me fairly hard yesterday or last night that a huge percentage of what we read, of what we invest in social media and on talk shows, and yes, this one too, is not even remotely reflective. Not just distorted, but not even remotely reflective of reality. And you know what I'm going to talk about here, because Exhibit A, to me with a bullet, is this Gregory Polanco thing. Gregory Polanco was the biggest issue of everyone's lives around here, it seemed like. And yeah, I'm playfully exaggerating here, but you know what I'm talking about. People were angry, they were animated, they were passionate, they were every 5 minutes tweeting or writing something about Polanco this, Polanco that, or calling up and ripping the Pirates and everything else, and I'm not going to do anything until he comes up. When he comes up, they'll show me they're serious and everything else. Okay, he came up yesterday, and let me preface this. I don't care if you went to the game or not. I never care if you go to the game. I don't judge you as a fan. I don't think about your fanhood. I don't think about whether or not how you compare to this fan or to that fan. I don't care. My only issue yesterday, and I brought this up on Twitter, much to the consternation of a handful of people, some of whom only got a distorted version of what it was that I said or wrote. This game last night had about roughly an 18-hour advance of when you knew Polanco was going to be there. If the Pirates hadn't given away 10,000 free tickets to the military, and God bless them for that, that's a wonderful thing. If the Pirates hadn't given away 10,000 free tickets, complimentary tickets to military members and their families for that game, you would have had a total of 21,000 people in that stadium. 6,000 of which would have been on walk-up. That's sports executive terms for meaning in the last 24 hours before. That means 6,000 people responded to buying tickets to go to see this game. 6,000. In a city, or region, more accurately, of 2.3 million. 6,000 people bought tickets to go see this mega, super, fantastic, historic, oh my God, this is the beginning and end of my life event. 6,000 people. I'm going to repeat this. I don't care if you bought them or not. I don't care if you had to babysit. I don't care if you didn't have the money for it or all. I'm sure everybody has their valid excuses, reasons, whatever it is that you want to call them. This isn't judging anybody's fanhood. Rather, I'm looking instead at judging the scope and magnitude of the way Polanco was hyped up. This didn't match that. It didn't match it. It didn't come close to it. It didn't come close to the amount of time that people like me have spent answering questions about it, talking about it. And yeah, a lot of it's been initiated. I'm guilty by people like myself. This didn't come close to it. If anybody was in that ballpark last night, then they saw when Polanco came up to bat for the first time, he got a nice warm ovation. People stood. It wasn't, this wasn't the blackout. There wasn't some, huge momentous thing. It was nice. Hey, kid, welcome. It really, I was at Three River Stadium when Aramis Ramirez came up as a 19-year-old, and it was pretty much the same response that Rami got, anybody else got. There wasn't anything special about it. I've had people getting mad on Twitter saying, well, if you look at other Tuesdays, this is great compared to other Tuesdays. This wasn't supposed to be any other Tuesday. This was supposed to be super, ultra, whatever Tuesday. And it wasn't. So again, take the attendance thing out of the equation because that's not my primary point here. My primary point instead is that this Polanco thing became this super huge thing off of Twitter and off of talk shows, and it never really was that. It never really was that big a deal.
What's your name?
Roger in Georgia, you're on. How are you, Roger?
How are you?
All right.
I'm one of the ones that have been trolling on you on Twitter.
Let me hear from you.
Issue.
I love the fact that you called, Roger. Let me hear from you.
Listen, I'm just calling to pretty much eat crow and say that I am one of the few obnoxious minority fans and twits on Twitter that railroad people like you and flood your timeline.
No, I'm guilty too. I'm not exempting myself.
But the bottom line is that you're right. These things get blown up on Twitter, and you know it's not quite the same thing, but it's kind of like the changing the name of the Redskins to me. It seems like it's the same few people that are really pushing for that.
It might be. We don't know that. I mean,
Right.
you know, I'm not going to get into the Redskins things. It's a separate issue.
I'm not trying to either.
But it might be. It might be a case where what's ended up happening with social media is that you can have the same 20, and I'm not suggesting it's only 20 people, but you can have the same 20 people go after one, whether it's a TV guy, radio guy, newspaper guy, and come at him and bombard him with the same stuff over and over and again. And that guy's going to think to himself before long, man, everybody feels this way.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I make myself believe it.
Were you surprised at all? And again, I'm going to say this for a third time now, that I'm not ripping the fans or anything else, but were you surprised, based on the hype beforehand, that this game wasn't sold out?
Oh, I bought into the hype that it would have been sold out. Absolutely. I was really surprised, especially after you provided the information that 10,000 tickets were given to military personnel. So, I mean, that really just blew my mind that only 6,000 walk-ups attended the game.
And it would have been a crowd of 21,000. I really appreciate the call. Thanks, man. Paul, you're on in Tennessee. What's going on, Paul?
Hey, man, thanks for taking the call. If you take last year's starting rotation...
You want to talk baseball?
If you take that starting rotation and have Polanco come up this time last year with that starting rotation, it's a hands-down sellout. I think the issue may be there's smart fans out there. Granted, there are, I don't want to say morons, but there are smart fans that realize, I mean, I bought into the hype. I loved that he came up. I watched it from work online last night. Every second of the game.
Oh, I heard from fans all across the country.
I'm worried.
Yeah.
I'm worried about pitching.
I hear you, and I hear that there's a not particularly general positive vibe about the team right now. They had a nice little run there, but that losing that last game in San Diego and then dropping 2 out of 3 to the Brewers and everything else, there isn't a particularly great vibe right now, especially losing Garrett Cole to the DL, and now probably Francisco Liriano to the DL. I get all that, and again, I'm going to say this. We're going to keep a running tab here. This is the 4th time I'm going to say this. I'm not criticizing the fans for not going. I'm saying I'm focusing more on the hype itself. That the hype didn't match this. What do you think would be a fair way for people like me to handle whenever you're getting bombarded for months and months over something, to figure out whether or not it's a real thing?
I read your columns, and you, along with a few others, and I say only a few, have done all you can do at this point. Everybody out there knows there's $12 to $13 million waiting, and there are 3 top-notch pitchers on subpar teams. I think you've done all you can do.
Well, I wrote
just
just last week a column challenging the Pirates to add to their starting pitching and to think boldly in the process, because they have an MVP on the roster. They have an all-world prospect that's up. They have talent. They have the defending home run champion over at third base. But then right after I wrote that, there goes Cole. There now goes Liriano. So now you don't just need one guy. You need maybe 3 or 4. And